The storms developed in the Berkshires, then fueled by the hot weather and pushed along by a cold front, they swept south and east. Before they blew out over the shoreline and onto Long Island, they peaked over Wallingford. In Wallingford, for about 90 minutes, the air was split by the sound of sirens. Sirens screamed, thunder rumbled, and lightning tore through the sky as Wallingford bore the brunt of a storm that had been building since mid-morning. The National Weather Service first tracked it just outside Meriden. It swept into Wallingford at 11:43. This construction company was struck by a lightning bolt that set off smoldering in the electrical system. Trucks rolled 17 times to scenes like this one.
We just keep dispatching trucks. When one is completed, we have many trucks, as you can see. And if we need Meriden or North Haven, they'll come in to assist us.
Several homes were hit by lightning, including this one. Its chimney was toppled. Firefighters plugged the gaping hole with plastic. But the worst damage took place right next door to the Yalesville fire station. Firefighter Mike Saul was just taking a breather between calls.
Well, it was a bright flash and simultaneous thunderclap. And then there was debris blowing around the parking lot. We looked over and saw the steeple literally falling into the ground.
Eleanor Huberger had just run out to close her car windows when she heard
a really loud crash, and I saw the steeple falling.
The steeple on the Heritage Baptist Temple was demolished. All firefighters could do was stand by and watch, then pick up the debris from this act of God.
Well, Barbara, that fast-moving storm you're talking about packed some pretty powerful lightning bolts, too. There were about a dozen lightning strikes reported around the Wallingford area, but the only major damage was at the Heritage Baptist Church in the Yalesville section, which lost part of its steeple to the lightning. It was shortly before noon when the lightning hit, exploding the wood-shingled steeple, leaving only a skeletal frame behind and debris scattered about on the ground below. Mike Bates and his friends saw it happen.
I was walking down the street over there, and I heard a big bolt, and then I looked down, and me and my friend Pat Timothy just saw the thing, lightning hit it, and it fell on the ground.
The church, ironically, is located right next door to the Yalesville Volunteer Fire Department, where the firemen had already been called in on standby as the storm rolled through, never thinking their first call would be so close.
We were standing approximately where I'm standing now, only inside the building, and we saw a flash of lightning, and the sound was simultaneous. And all of a sudden, there was debris flying all around the parking lot out here.
Did the steeple itself actually catch fire?
No, but the rope coming down from the bell did catch fire. When we went upstairs in the balcony area inside, we found the knot on the end of the rope burning.
Other than some minor damage to the electrical wiring system in the church, the steeple was the only casualty. And luckily, there were no injuries. And fire officials say that, as we mentioned, there were about 12 other lightning strikes around Wallingford. At least one business was hit, but by and large, they were chimneys on houses. But in all cases, damage was minor, and again, there were no injuries.
Between 11:30 and 1 o'clock this afternoon, Wallingford firefighters were busy answering calls about buildings hit by lightning. While 17 buildings were struck, town officials say damage was minor overall. The most severe damage occurred here at the Heritage Baptist Church in the Yalesville section of town. Lightning blew the steeple apart. The church is next to a firehouse. Assistant Chief Mike Saul witnessed the incident.
Well, as they say, we heard the lightning thunderclap, and saw the flash simultaneously. And we were standing here in the doorway of the firehouse looking out at the rain. Debris came raining down in the parking lot, so we went over to the church immediately to check it out.
Was there any fire damage to the church at all?
There's no structural damage from fire. There's some electric wiring that appears to have been damaged by the lightning, and of course the bell rope burned coming down from the steeple.
The bolt of lightning struck closer than Saul realized. It took the ball from atop the fire station's flagpole. There were no injuries reported.
Not that we're aware of, no. Minor property damage. We were very lucky considering the intensity of the storm.
Town officials are still assessing the exact amount of financial loss. Lou Brown, 30 News, Wallingford.
That's right, Pat. Fire officials say it may take them some time to figure out what started that two-alarm fire at Alia's Amoco station on Route 150. The station itself was destroyed by the fire, which broke out about 9:45 this morning.
When we arrived on the scene, we had a gas station here, fully involved into 3 repair bays. The fire extended up into the roof, over into the office area. When we arrived on the scene, we had 2 males that were severely burned that were taken to Meriden Wallingford Hospital.
It took firefighters a half an hour to bring the blaze under control and keep it from spreading to a nearby trailer park. The fire apparently started in the service bays, but firemen say it will take time to find the exact cause. 2 vehicles in the garage were also destroyed. Now, the gas tanks themselves did not go up.
No, the gas tanks are underground. There's no potential problem there. The only thing we had a problem with was the different propane tanks and the different tanks, acetylene tanks that were in the garage area. And we had numerous small explosions.
Station owner Joseph Alia's 19-year-old son Ted was critically injured in the fire, as was a second employee, 18-year-old David Figueroa. Thomas Henschrock is the ambulance attendant who drove Figueroa to the hospital.
He was burned about 80% of his body. He was in considerable pain. That's all he kept screaming was, you know, give me something for pain, give me something for pain. But we just, you know, covered him with burn sheets and put sterile water and normal saline all over his body. But he had a full-face beard and hair, and it was all burnt off of his body.
Fire officials say they won't know for sure how the fire started until they can talk with the 2 teenagers, but they have tonight ruled out the possibility that the fire was set. Now, Ted Alia and Dave Figueroa have been transferred to the burn unit at Yale New Haven Hospital tonight, where both of them are listed in critical condition.
Heat so intense that firemen had to smash all the windows to get some fresh air in. Most had already been broken in the explosion. 2 young men were seriously burned. 18-year-old Ted Alia, the gas station owner's son, and Dave Figueroa, an attendant, also 18 years old. Both were taken to local hospitals and then transferred to Yale New Haven Hospital. The ambulance attendant says they were in a lot of pain.
The young man that I took, Dave Figueroa, was burned about 80% of his body. His clothes were burnt right off of him, and his boots were still smoking from being on fire. And he was just a little hysterical in considerable pain.
What about
We took him up to the hospital right away. The other fellow was standing right beside him, and he said to take Dave first. They were in pain. They just wanted to be knocked out. That's all Dave kept saying, knock me out, knock me out. My hands are burning up. I can't stand the pain.
Investigators say the whole incident was caused by some sort of chemical igniting, but are not sure what it was. Looking on in disbelief, Joseph Alia, the station's operator, said he would probably rebuild if he can afford it. Tony Wingfield, Action News 8, in the Yalesville section of Wallingford.
They're hunting for the cause of the blaze in Rosalie Altieri's home. The fire started near the furnace. Rosalie was at work at the time. Fortunately, nobody was injured, but firefighters were slipping and sliding on the ice all their water created, so buckets of sand had to be tossed around to protect them. And investigators say the fire's heat was so intense, part of the reason the trailer is very well insulated and the flames could not escape. Al?
Happened at 19 and 21 Curtis Avenue. Fire broke out in the basement of the 3-story house. 3 families were living in the building. The blaze quickly spread through the walls. Fire officials say that the building has extensive damage. The cause of the fire is being investigated, but officials say an oil burner is suspect.
Firefighters got a break. A fire in an auto painting facility was quickly and fairly easily brought under control. It broke out shortly after 4. 7 units were dispatched to the scene. Officials were concerned that highly flammable paint cans might explode. Fortunately, that did not happen. Nobody injured in that wall.
7 people in all were injured in the overnight blaze, which may have been caused by a faulty kerosene heater. Channel 3's Rad Berkey has the latest now on the Meadow Street tragedy.
The 2-alarm fire that broke out about 1:15 this morning ripped through the wood frame house on Meadow Street. 20-year-old Richard Dwyer was found dead in a second-floor front bedroom. In all, 7 other people were injured. A fireman and another member of Dwyer's family were hospitalized.
It appears that there is a kerosene heater involved at this time. We need further investigation to guarantee that is the source of the fire.
That kerosene heater was located in a first-floor hallway here between 2 rooms. Now, would it possibly have tipped over?
No.
Maybe that's what I should do is maybe take a minute, sit down.
But maybe too close to the wall.
That we can't say at this time until we examine the heater thoroughly.
This collapsible metal ladder that the family kept on the 3rd floor is being credited with saving 1 life. When firemen arrived, they found Dawn Dwyer clinging to that ladder and were able to get her down safely. A next-door neighbor who had heard cries for help called the fire department.
A very nice kid. Very nice kid. Just had a lot of tough luck, you know. there's cars and everything, you know. It's just a shame. The whole family's nice, you know, the mother, the father, nice people.
Brad Berkey, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Wallingford.
A multiple family home on Meadow Street. Flames were shooting out of a first-floor window when firefighters arrived. All but one of the residents was safely evacuated. 20-year-old Richard Dwyer died shortly after being pulled from the burning house. Dwyer's father, brother, and sister were injured. They were treated at a nearby hospital and then released. 3 firefighters were also hurt. One of them was admitted to Meriden Wallingford Hospital. The house is a total loss.
In the Yalesville section of Wallingford this morning, authorities say once again a smoke detector has saved a life. They say a person on the second floor was alerted to a fire on the first floor at 356 Main Street, and she escaped without injury. However, an elderly woman, Ann Milligan, was not as fortunate. She received burns over 90% of her body. And this morning, Yale New Haven Hospital tells Action News she is in critical condition. Authorities at this hour don't know how the blaze started. It was contained to the first floor of a 2-story building by some 30 firefighters. The fire marshal's office is investigating.
That list, when we turn to these telethons every year, the firefighters from around the state of Connecticut, from around the United States, helping out with Jerry's kids. Let's bring in some fellows here from Wallingford who have brought us a check, and I want to tell you before we move along to make sure that you're picking up that telephone as we talk. Our telephone number is 397-1481, 397-1481. It is very important that you participate. The time is beginning to run short. These gentlemen have been working, and they can tell us what they've been up to.
We held a softball tournament this weekend in Wallingford from the Wallingford Volunteer Firefighters and Career Firefighters, and we'd like to present this check for $2,000.
Fantastic. $2,000. Your name is?
Bill Thomas.
And?
Bill Salata.
And?
Bob Pizar.
Well, Bill, and Bob, thank you very much from Wallingford. Let's turn over to David right now.
Good evening. At the top of the news tonight, an explosion that sent flames some 75 feet into the air and blew up a house near downtown Wallingford today. Authorities say that 72-year-old Beatrice Vitale barely escaped with her life. Tonight, she's in guarded condition at Yale New Haven Hospital. Peter Dench has the story.
From above in Chopper 8, a look down on devastation. It looked like someone dropped a bomb on this home. Witnesses say they heard 2 loud explosions and watched and listened in horror as the gas-fueled fire gutted this house. Beatrice Vitale, the only person at home, fled in flames, crawling out a door into the street. She was rushed to Yale New Haven Hospital as firefighters fought the flame.
As you can tell from the structure, the house has blown up and the building has dropped into the basement.
One woman told me the explosion was so loud that it could be heard easily 1 mile away at the Choate Rosemary Hall School, where she said it cracked a window on her home.
First explosion, started shaking the house, and then the second explosion, and it blew out my front window.
And what did you think at the time?
I honestly thought it was an earthquake.
The window blew out first, the picture window, right at me. I jumped back, and the dog took off down the street, and then the whole roof went off, and it scared the living hell out of me. I was really scared. I don't ever want to have a scare like that again.
Everywhere you looked, you saw debris scattered from the explosion. Authorities immediately shut off electricity to other homes in the area as they probed for the cause and capped the gas leak that was still fueling a small fire more than an hour after the explosion. Fire department inspectors have already checked all homes in the area for a possibly dangerous gas buildup, and Mayor Bill Dickinson tells Action News he looks forward to seeing a report as soon as possible from the fire department about the horror on Simpson Avenue. Peter Dash, Action News 8, Wallingford.
An explosion in Wallingford that could be heard miles away blew up a house, sending a 72-year-old Wallingford woman to the hospital. She is in guarded condition tonight. A look from above shows the shell of a home in Wallingford Simpson Avenue, not far from the downtown area. It was right next to where road crews were repaving, and natural gas in the home fanned the flames. Flames that engulfed Beatrice Vitale as she crawled from the gutted home.
The window blew out first, the picture window, right at me. I jumped back, and the dog took off down the street, and then the whole roof went off, and it scared the living hell out of me. I was really scared. I don't ever want to have a scare like that again.
As Vitale was rushed to Yale New Haven Hospital, firefighters doused the fire and capped a gas leak. Authorities immediately shut off electricity to other homes in the area and checked for other problems.
We have been going in and checking to make sure that there isn't gas buildup or a dangerous situation in any of the other buildings.
The Wallingford mayor says he'll wait to look at a full report from the fire department before recommending any measures on the action. The explosion shattered windows up to a mile away, and residents in Wallingford say they'll never forget those two loud explosions that they heard today. Officials have not released the cause of the explosion.
After an explosion leveled her home today, Beatrice Vitelli was the only one in her Wall Street Simpson Avenue area home when what appears to have been a natural gas explosion occurred at around noon, and the effects were felt for several blocks.
The front picture window blew right at me, and then the roof went off. Scared the heck out of me, and my...
Debris was scattered throughout the area, and people a mile away said the blast broke windows. Fire officials speculate a ruptured gas line near some road construction may have caused that blast.
Well, tonight, officials say the explosion may well have been caused by a ruptured gas line. That explosion in Wallingford around noon blew up a home belonging to a 72-year-old woman. Tonight, Beatrice Vitelli is in guarded condition at Yale New Haven Burn Center.
I was standing there with my dog, and the picture window, not too far from me, blew out first, right at me. I jumped back, and my dog took off. I don't know where he is. And then the roof went up, and the whole house collapsed.
Wallingford fire officials say the explosion could have been triggered when road crews hit a gas line on the street, or they say there could have been a gas leak inside the house. The investigation continues.
We're told the site is that of Crescent Industries, and the fire burned for a full hour before firefighters could bring it under control. Channel 3's Lucille Caliendo has details.
The flames were so intense, the smoke so thick, billowing clouds were visible more than 15 miles away. At least 125 firefighters from Wallingford, including 4 volunteer units, fought the early afternoon fire.
The building was 50% involved in fire when we arrived on the scene. It's extended another 25%, and we have saved 25% of the building.
Do you know what started this?
No, it's, as you can see, it's still on fire. It's under investigation. We haven't even had a chance to get in yet.
There was also word that the sprinklers weren't working. Can you tell at this point if that's true?
No, as you can see behind me, the building's well involved. We haven't had a chance to get in to check the sprinklers. The building did have sprinklers, but they did not operate.
You don't know why?
No, not yet.
Were they turned off?
We don't know. We can't get in to find out yet.
The company, which recently changed hands, was closed, the building vacant. Fire lured scores of onlookers.
The flames, they were unreal, and the smell and the smoke was so black.
No injuries were reported in today's fire. Lucille Caliendo, Channel 3, Eyewitness News, Wallingford.
Flames rose high into the air this afternoon over the Crescent Industries building as fire destroyed the plant. Crescent manufactures wooden trusses, and those trusses kept fueling the fire. It took 7 fire trucks 45 minutes to bring that blaze under control. Tonight, several Wallingford firemen were still at the scene, keeping an eye and some water on troublesome hot spots. Fire investigators don't know what started the blaze, but they do know that the sprinkler system had been turned off.
Well, this is under investigation, but I don't know. I think the building was going to be under renovation. I don't think it was occupied. This is just off of my head here, and I think possibly it was not heated. And they possibly didn't want, being away, didn't want the pipes to freeze or whatever. This, again, is still being investigated.
Officials believe the fire started at the front of the building and quickly spread throughout the huge structure. It's total loss, and now some 17 people will be out of a job, at least for a while.
You want to take 3 burning fire on the #1 floor in a 3 frame. We got a car up against exposure 2 with a victim trapped in the car.
Your life could be in their hands. They're volunteer firefighters.
I want to ladder to each stairwell.
Instead of bowling or watching TV on this hot and humid July night, they're getting a practical lesson in firefighting and rescue. And in many cases, this dedication is a family tradition.
My grandfather, my father, my brother, my brother-in-law, my uncle, and now me. I'm the youngest, so just get in line.
Volunteer firefighters saved homes and lives when they fought back brush fires in central New Jersey this spring. In fact, volunteer firefighters have been a mainstay of public safety in New Jersey for many years. New Jersey has 567 communities, mostly small towns. Only 42 have paid or even partly paid fire departments. 525, almost every community in the state, depends on volunteers.
Join your volunteer fire department. They need you, and you need them.
But all across the state, fewer and fewer people are answering the fire bell. State officials say there is a serious shortage of volunteers in almost every New Jersey community.
Sometimes the truck won't roll. Sometimes you drive with one guy. You're it, the driver, that's it. But when you get there, there's maybe 2 or 3 guys waiting for you. Hopefully. Or maybe nobody.
The shortage of volunteer firefighters is a direct result of the growth of the communities they serve. Old farmlands have given way to bedroom communities, now populated by upwardly mobile young professionals, sometimes called yuppies. And oddly enough, the higher the income level, the higher the property values of these developing communities, the fewer the volunteer firefighters.
The condos are going up, and it's going to get tougher and tougher to find people that are willing to get in. It's going to be tough to tell those yuppies to get their hands dirty.
In fact, most volunteer firefighters have blue-collar jobs. So those booming suburban communities with their white-collar office parks and pricey housing developments are becoming too expensive for the people who typically volunteer.
We'll get them from the apartment complexes, and they'll stay 1 or 2 years. We train them and everything. And when they go to buy a house, the prices in Parsippany are so high that they can't afford to buy a house in Parsippany.
In New Jersey, volunteers in some communities may also have to face the added dangers of chemical fires. So the amount of time a volunteer must invest in training discourages a lot of career-driven people.
Training, the very first course we take as a volunteer fireman in the beginning is a 16-night course. You're talking 8 weeks twice a week. You're talking 3 hours a night, plus very intensive training and testing.
Who wants to get up at 4:30 in the morning and come to a fire? Especially if you have a meeting tomorrow morning that's going to involve a lot of preparation and a lot of work.
Volunteers were roused from their sleep at 5:44 in the morning to respond to this barn fire in Long Valley, New Jersey that killed 3 people this week. But communities are at even greater risk from the shortage of volunteers during the day when people go to work.
Nobody works in the town anymore. Everybody stays out of town.
Bedroom community, and we're really short on help. We're just lucky there's some people that are dedicated.
No matter who you talk to across the country, they're having the same type problems as we are.
Think people care less about their communities?
I don't think it's so much caring less. It's the fact that they're trying to make a living and trying to make their own ends meet, and consequently do not have the time to put in that's required to be put in to be a volunteer fireman.
Even Fort Lee, New Jersey, with all of its high-rises, depends on volunteers for fire protection. And Fort Lee has found one way to keep firefighters in town during the day. They are given first chance at city jobs, like the Public Works Department. But city salaries don't pay Fort Lee rents and mortgages, and the volunteers are now asking for housing subsidies.
Help pay to rent the mortgage. This way it helps keep guys in town.
There is legislation in Trenton to help volunteer fire departments pay some of their bills. But currently there are few material rewards for becoming a volunteer firefighter in New Jersey. A death benefit of $3,000, $6,000 if killed in the line of duty. And while New Jersey law says a volunteer must be released from his job to respond to a fire, the law does not say his boss still has to pay him.
No, I don't get paid if I missed work, and I don't get paid for going to the fire, so you gotta like it.
How long do you think you'll be a volunteer?
Oh, until I go to a paid department, until I die doing it. I don't know. Whichever comes first.
Without volunteer firefighters, communities would have to hire full-time paid departments, and that would cost. But the value of the volunteers must also be measured in something more than just dollars and cents. In the spirit of one neighbor helping another. And that's something no community can afford to lose. I'm Roseanne Coletti, Channel 2 News, Mahwah, New Jersey.
Her mother died in the blaze, but as Harlan Levy reports tonight, the fire may have been set to cover up a homicide.
Shortly after 4 this morning, Wallingford firefighters and police rushed to the scene of what they thought was just a house fire at 84 Ridgetop, where Connie and Bill Zima lived with their 2 children, Tommy 9 and Tracy 7. But what they discovered was a lot worse.
Connie was found in the basement area. She was lying on the floor. She was rushed to Mary Wallingford Hospital, where she had died. It appears that she may have died from a gunshot wound. We don't know what the cause of the fire was or how it started.
The death is being called a homicide. Connie Zima was also 5 months pregnant. The child could not be saved.
What about the daughter? Was she shot also? The daughter, at this time, we really can't comment.
7-year-old Tracy Zima was observed to have a head wound when she was brought out of the house. She was flown to Hartford Hospital in critical condition. Bill Zima was at work while all this was going on. 9-year-old Tommy escaped through his bedroom window to neighbor Richard Klimas's home when he smelled smoke.
He had told me that his house was full of smoke and that he couldn't wake up his sister and that he thought his mother was in the basement. So we brought him in, and I had my wife call 911.
Family members were immediately notified. Bill Zima's sister arrived on the scene at 11 a.m. She and the rest of the family have been questioned by police.
I think it's pretty sad, you know. It's a bad way to die.
Harlan Levy, 30 News.
Doctors tried to save her unborn child, but to no avail. Channel 3's Jeffrey Cole is with the LiveEye in Wallingford tonight. Jeffrey.
Well, Marlene and Don, when authorities here in Wallingford were first called to this scene, they thought they had a fire on their hands. As you can see behind me, this building is blackened where there was smoke, where there was fire here. But as they investigated, they found out there had been a shooting. Here's what we know about this case at this time. Just after 4 this morning, 9-year-old Tommy Zima ran from his burning home to the neighbor's house for help.
He said that his house was full of smoke. He couldn't wake up his sister. And he thought that his mother was down in the basement. So I immediately had my wife call 911, and I went over to see if there was anything I could do.
The smoke kept Klimas from going inside. His wife called the fire department. 28-year-old Connie Zima was found in the basement. Her 7-year-old daughter was in the bedroom. She was taken to Hartford Hospital, where she's in critical condition. Her mother was dead on arrival at Wallingford Meriden Hospital. She had been shot.
Connie Zima was pregnant at the time, and she was approximately 20 weeks pregnant. At this time, we really don't know what we have. She did have a gunshot wound to her chest, abdomen area.
Efforts to save the fetus failed. Wallingford police and the state's attorney's office are investigating. They say they have found a gun in the house. Late in the morning, Connie Zima's sister-in-law arrived at the house. Police say they know where Zima's husband was at the time of the fire.
He was at work, working for a trucking firm, and he was called by a neighbor that something had occurred at his house, and he rushed home.
One neighbor says when he ran out of his home at 4:20 this morning, he saw Tracy Zima lying in the sidewalk. He says it smelled like rags or a rug was burning. Neighbors can't believe what's happened.
It doesn't seem possible, just, you know, that something could happen, something could happen that easily and not even be aware of it, and it doesn't seem real. It doesn't, you know, it's just a shame.
And the investigation is ongoing tonight. You are looking at a Wallingford police officer. Next to him is a truck. They are using that truck to transport evidence that they're taking from this building tonight. No word on where that evidence is going or what they have, but we have been told that they are taking evidence from the building, and they will be taking it to look at what has happened here. Once again, a 28-year-old woman is dead. Her daughter is in critical condition at Hartford Hospital. She had a 9-year-old son. He got out of the hospital okay. Out of this building okay. He did go to the hospital, and he was checked out. He is fine. That's the story here tonight from Wallingford. Jeff Cole reporting live.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeffrey.
For an elderly man, 79-year-old John Barrett, who has been missing for the last 2 days. His family says he took a walk and never came back. They are worried that he has not eaten or had anything to drink for the more than 48 hours that he has been missing.
My father's gotten senile, and he's not like he used to be, not as quick as he used to be. He's also has arthritis terrible, and he gets confused, so I don't know.
He did have aspirations of using a helicopter or a light plane from the state police, but as you can see, it would probably do us to no good because you have to actually search this by foot.
Well, the searchers are combing a heavily wooded and marshy area of Wallingford on foot. As you can see, the search will resume tomorrow morning.
If you've taken a drive recently down Route 5, Colony Road in Wallingford, you may have noticed that the Burger King restaurant there is serving up its Whoppers out of a trailer. Peter Dench reports that it was a fire that forced BK to set up this temporary restaurant.
We're trying to keep the people happy, keep them coming back for their Whoppers.
Burger King manager Debbie DeNardis is talking about business and bouncing back from a fire that could have crippled it. 3 weeks ago, a blaze in the ceiling triggered by a faulty valve shut BK down. But a week ago, this Winnebago trailer was called in from Burger King headquarters in Miami. It is one of 12 in the country. Burger King tells us normally this mobile restaurant is used at fairs, on college campuses, and at military bases. This is the first time it's been used nationwide after a fire. When you drive up, you get a look at a limited menu. Yes, you can get a Whopper, though, and a special order. It's all cooked here and given to you or delivered to your car. Any difference? No difference at all. No difference at all. Any difference, sir? Not really. We watched closely as people took a taste. People like Phil Hubbard.
Very similar to the regular Burger King Whopper.
How does it compare?
Very good. I think it could be a little more done, but I think with the situation that they have here, they're doing a hell of a good job.
I think the hamburger is good.
No difference at all.
No, I don't think so.
Hold the pickle, hold the lettuce. They say they can do it all inside this Winnebago trailer. People who work here tell us this is a good story about the American work ethic, prompting some of them to say, where there's a will, there's a Whopper. Peter Dench, Action News 8, Wallingford.
Well, Janet, black smoke filled the sky over Wallingford this afternoon as a giant fire swept through a lumber yard, and the embers are continuing to smolder tonight.
Carla Wall is live on the action cam with the latest for us. Carla?
Janet, firefighters continue to pour water on this stubborn blaze. The fire here at Colony Lumber was reported 7 hours ago. And as you can see behind me, there are still flames and heavy smoke coming out of the rubble. That is all that's left of a large storage building, a building that went up like a tinderbox at 11 this morning.
I was over sweeping at the other end of the yard, and then I heard someone yell fire, and then I looked over and I saw a large cloud of smoke.
Wallingford firefighters arrived minutes later, but it was too late to save the wooden storage building. It was filled with building materials like asphalt and cedar siding, materials that became fuel for the fire, which literally burnt the building to the ground.
First units arrived on the scene. They had heavy smoke and heavy fire showing, and they had fire that had started to impinge on the other storage buildings that are to your left and to the right.
To stop the blaze, close to 40 firefighters began moving thousands of bags of mulch that surrounded the burning building. By 12:15, the threat was gone and the fire under control. Still, the embers smoldered and the heavy smoke streamed into the sky. Smoke so thick, the sun barely penetrated. Neighbors at a trailer park across the road watched the black cloud and held their breath.
Kind of alarmed in the beginning because we didn't know if the heat was coming this way, you know, and start cooking these houses.
No homes were lost and no one was injured, but this isn't the first time fire has threatened the area. In fact, it is the third fire at Colony Lumber. The first 25 years ago, the second about 7 years ago.
The fire about 7 years ago was an arson. A 14-year-old boy started the fire.
Wallingford police detectives are combing through the charred remains of this fire right now. They have been able to determine that the fire started in the front right corner of the building behind me. They still don't know why. In fact, they say it will probably be several days before a cause is determined. Nothing is being ruled out at this point. The fire is expected to smoke and smolder throughout the night. Firefighters, of course, will be here keeping an eye on it. In Wallingford, I'm Carla Wohl, live on the Action Cam.
It's a familiar business to many, many area residents, and a lot of them are saddened by what's happened today.
Thank
you, Carla.
Good evening. Fire today completely wiped out a storage building on the grounds of the Colony Lumber Company in Wallingford. Tom Monahan reports it took some 75 firefighters at least 3 hours to bring the blaze under control.
It erupted shortly after 11 o'clock this morning in storage building number 2, one of 7 such buildings owned by the company. No one was hurt in the blaze, and while there's been no estimate of the financial loss, damage is said to be extensive. Chief Jack McElfish of the Wallingford Fire Department says an investigation will be conducted to determine the cause of the fire.
The employees that were on the scene reported they were working in the building and they heard an explosion and noticed the fire and immediately called the fire department. We had heavy fire throughout the whole building when we arrived. We had fuel tanks on the outside that we had to cool down, so it was a matter of just going ahead and putting heavy lines, heavy water onto the fire and just containing it within that one building.
The storage building measured 150 by 200 feet, and it was about 20 feet high. It contained lumber, sheetrock, and other building supplies. Also located nearby, 2 tanks containing fuel.
Fuel tanks could have been a problem, though.
They could have been. We immediately started wetting them down, and we had no problem from there on.
Bobby Benigni works at the lumber company. He was one of the first to arrive on the scene after the blaze broke out.
They said it was electrical fire or somebody started with a cigarette. They have no idea yet.
Was there a loud noise?
No, there was no noise. We just saw smoke.
That's what you saw when you got here, a lot of smoke.
Yeah. We saw it from up Middletown over by there. We knew it was this place.
Investigators will now talk to all the people who were here when the fire broke out. They will analyze every piece of information to try to determine what happened. Tom Monahan, 30 News in Wallingford.
Tonight, fire officials in Wallingford are looking for the cause of a major blaze that destroyed a lumber warehouse late this morning. A foreman with the Colony Lumber Company estimates the damage to be about $1.5 million. Luckily, no one was in the building when the fire broke out. Firefighters say it took only 20 minutes for the blaze to destroy the warehouse. We talked with officials on the scene.
So fully involved, it was basically a situation of our people using heavy hand lines and heavy hose streams to knock the fire down. We didn't really make any advances into the building, one because it was so far gone.
Firefighters say all they could do in this case was contain the fire to one building. The flames were out within a few hours. Denise?
Joanne, the situation now appears to be under control. Fire officials have been on the scene for just about 2 hours now, and they do tell us that things are under control. Earlier this evening, about 100 area residents were evacuated, but those residents have now, as you said, been allowed to return to their homes. It was at about 8:45 this evening that fire officials responded to a fire here at Quantum Incorporated. They manufacture industrial products. The fire apparently started in the waste bin that was used for storing resin shavings, and it wasn't sure as to what was burning.
What was released in the atmosphere was what was burning, and that's what we're trying to fully determine. We know it was a resin product, but that we don't, know how much or what else was involved. But the way the wind was blowing, we had, a good wind, and it was blowing the smoke and the away from the area.
Now, there were 10 employees in the building at the time of the fire. None of them, luckily, were injured. They are all being now showered down for precautionary measures. The Department of Environmental Protection is on the scene to check out exactly what was burning. Now, Art DeVellis, who works at the plant and who is also in charge of hazardous waste here, assured us that there is no danger. He said that there's no immediate danger in the area, that he's very familiar with the chemical that is burning, and he said that there is no reason for alarm at this time. So, recapping tonight's situation, there was a fire here earlier this evening. It is now under control, and all those residents who were evacuated are now being allowed to return to their homes. Joanne?
And is Quantum the only building in that area, or are there others around it, other factories or office buildings?
There are some other areas around, but mainly to the south is a residential area, and that was their main concern. Now, I asked the question, perhaps was this an overreaction to the situation, but in a case like this, when you don't know exactly what is burning or what fumes are being admitted into the air, better to be safe about it and to get the people out of the area and determine what the problem is, which is exactly what they have done.
Okay, thanks very much. Ann Baldwin live tonight from Wallingford.
Preliminary probe into last night's fire at the Barnes Industrial Park in Wallingford so far has turned up nothing. Investigators were on the scene today looking for clues into the blaze. It led to the evacuation of 90 nearby residents. No one was hurt, but burning resins sent up toxic clouds of smoke last night. The blaze was under control and actually was out within a couple of hours. The Wallingford plant makes jet engine parts. Damage to the industrial complex is being called considerable.
Turns out it really wasn't much of a threat, but some pretty scary hours for people in Wallingford last night as firemen moved quickly to evacuate homes just south of the Barnes Industrial Park near Route 5, worried about potentially toxic fumes coming from a small fire.
Their management personnel told us, that it was a resin. We consulted with our hazard materials books, and we went ahead and reacted to what they recommended, such things as evacuating a half a mile, using water fog, everybody in protective clothing, everybody wearing breathing apparatus.
The fire at the Quantum plant began shortly before 9 o'clock last night in a container of dust from a plastic resin used at the plant. Neighbors as far away as 3/4 of a mile were shooed out of their homes until the fire was out and the air was cleared.
Tonight, state officials are looking toward Wallingford as they put together a statewide evacuation plan in case of disaster. After a chemical fire last night, officials in Wallingford are being praised for their swift and very effective reaction. We get more on the story from Channel 3's Bertha Coombs.
It was a contained fire, a chemical residue burning in a waste bin. Wallingford fire officials went by the book, evacuating the area for half a mile.
We consulted with our hazard materials books, and we went ahead and reacted to what they recommended.
The fire was controlled fairly quickly and fumes were kept from spreading. Still, 75 people were evacuated for over 2 hours as a precaution. As more and more communities are finding that chemical accidents are happening within their boundaries, they feel that they have to be prepared for the inevitable.
I would say the majority of the towns do not have a plan. And
Public safety officials say it's planning that keeps chemical accidents from turning into tragedies. It's worked so far this year. In Avon, when a truck carrying solvents rolled over, and in Meriden, where officials used foam to put out a gas tanker fire. The damages in both cases were contained.
it's too late once something happens to put something together quickly in order to react to it.
Next month, a state task force will unveil a program to help all of the state's towns develop their own emergency plans and train personnel to deal with accidents.
A generic plan, which is really a blueprint. It asks the questions that should be asked by a town to put together a plan to answer their specific needs.
Wallingford has had a chemical emergency plan for over a year, working with the DEP and local industries to get a handle on what materials are in the area. The fire department hopes to have a hazardous materials team on hand round the clock.
Keep up to date and keep updating what is here in our community as far as hazardous material is concerned, how to deal with it, what's the proper equipment.
The state's program won't be mandatory, but the DEP is sure there'll be a high participation. Keeping accidents from becoming tragedies is a powerful incentive. Bertha Coombs, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Wallingford.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pat Sheehan.
And I'm Denise DeCenzo.
It was a can of ether that exploded this morning, sending 3 students and a teacher to the hospital in Wallingford.
The 4 were reportedly in the middle of a science experiment at the Moran Junior High School when the explosion and fire took place early this morning. Channel 3's Ginny Musanti is standing by with the LiveEye unit to give us the very latest. Ginny.
Tense moments indeed, Denise. 4 students and a teacher were injured and sent to the hospital. Now, I'm told that the injuries are relatively minor, burns to the hands and to the face and to the leg. But again, some of the burns were first and second degree burns, but again, the burns were not that serious. Now, this all happened when a biology experiment literally backfired. The teacher, Alan Kurtz, was trying to extract chlorophyll from a plant. He was heating the plant in some liquid in a beaker on a hot plate. When he went to pour alcohol into that beaker, a few drops fell onto the heated hot plate, and then a flash occurred and an explosion. The can of alcohol exploded. Vapors went into the air. There was some spray, and that's what went on the 4 students who were reportedly sitting in the front row. Again, the students were taken to Memorial Hospital and Meriden Wallingford Hospital. They are said to be in relatively good condition. No one else in the class was injured. There were about 25 students in the class. A teacher next door said it sounded as if a door had slammed. Then he heard students say fire, and they evacuated quickly and orderly. There was no panic. A custodian at the school put the fire out with a fire extinguisher. Damage was very minimal. A wastebasket had melted. And the fire department said the fire was out when they were arrived. School is open, and things are calm at the school. Back to you, Pat and Denise.
All right, thank you. Ginny Musanti with the live report from Wallingford.
Good evening. A science teacher and 4 of his students are treated for burns after a biology experiment blows up at their middle school in Wallingford.
Channel 3's Ginny Musanti reports it was to have been a routine experiment. She explains what went wrong in this report tonight from the scene.
The 7th graders in room 213 at the Moran Middle School were looking forward to learning about chlorophyll. Instead, they learned a lesson in the explosive nature of alcohol. It was 10 o'clock, and teacher Alan Kurtz was trying to extract chlorophyll from a leaf.
To do that, you need to boil it in alcohol. So what I had done was heated the water first. We opened the windows in the classroom to provide ventilation, and we put the boiling water inside the other beaker of water, and we put the leaf in, but it was taking so long that we needed to add more alcohol to the beaker.
It was an experiment he'd conducted 30 or 40 times before, but this time it backfired.
The explosion occurred when he was pouring alcohol into the beaker, and a couple of drops dropped onto the hot plate.
It got on the burner, and it went all the way up into the can, and it blew up, and Mr. Kurtz got burnt.
The front of me was burning. You know, I couldn't tell whether it was the alcohol that was burning or the clothing.
Kurt suffered second-degree burns on both hands. 4 students also suffered burns on their hands, face, and legs. All were treated and released from the hospital. 3 of the students were back at school for afternoon classes. The school remained open and classes went on as usual. In fact, some students in the school had no idea that there really was a fire.
I was just explaining to the kids how volatile alcohol is and to be careful with it. And yet this leak that was in the can caused it all.
The lesson learned today was not about chlorophyll, but about caution. And most believe it is a lesson these students will never forget. Ginny Musanti, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Wallingford.
In Wallingford, a science experiment went awry at a school today, causing a fire that left 4 students and their teacher injured. Kathy Marshall has more.
This is the 7th grade biology classroom where 24 students sat watching the experiment. The teacher was behind the lab table working with materials including alcohol and a Bunsen burner. It was a textbook experiment for extracting chlorophyll from a leaf. The fire chief in Wallingford says it's been done hundreds of times in school labs, but today the teacher touched off a flash fire.
He went to put some alcohol to do whatever the experiment called for. When he did that, some of the alcohol leaked down out of the container onto the burner, igniting the container, and it seems as though the instructor then threw the container because he was, I guess, burning also.
The teacher threw the burning container away from the class, igniting some parts of the room. But staff members at the school came with fire extinguishers to put the fire out within minutes. The injured students were most likely sitting at the front of the room. 3 of the students had superficial burns. The fire chief says 1 student suffered second-degree burns to the face. The teacher also reported to be suffering from second-degree burns. All of the injured were taken to area hospitals. By early afternoon, the confusion had cleared at Moran Middle School. Classes were back in session, and the assistant principal tells us at least 3 of the injured students had returned to school. The fire chief met with students in the science class to help them deal with the shock.
Just to affirm that, you know, that in case they did have any shock or any trauma, to let us know about it and to make sure that they weren't hiding any injuries.
Kathy Marshall, Action News 8, Wallingford.
Tonight, the hospitals who treated the injured say all 5 have been released. School officials would not tell us their name.
Camden delivered almost 90 gallons of fuel to his home on Monday, and when he and his wife were gone Thursday, another 300 gallons was delivered. They're taking this whole thing in stride, but they do want to be compensated for the estimated $10,000 in damage to their home. Now, City Fuel, on the other hand, is blaming the accident on a faulty gauge on the fuel tank. A spokesman says the whole thing is going to be turned over to an insurance company.
Tonight, residents on Pearl Street. This was a preliminary competition for the big event on October 10th. Among the daring judges today, our own Al Terzi, who shortly after this picture was taken, drank an entire bottle of water. The winner today was Hartford Assistant Chief Richard Epps. He gets to attend the Great American Chili Cook-Off 1 week from tomorrow, October 10th, at the Shallowbrook Equestrian Center in Somers. If you'd like information on entering or attending that event, you can call 233-2222. That's 233-2222.
They're probably a little burnt out, too, so you're probably going to wait till Monday to call that number to find out about the big chili contest.
I can tell by the way you've been guzzling water. You were there today, too.
I was there today, and I will be there on the 10th. And we should say this is sponsored by Connecticut's largest employer, United Technologies Corporation. And it's all for the hospice, as you said. And that's it. The people who take care of the folks.
Pat, Denise, a Los Angeles alert. And Denise, as we say in the kitchen, is it soup?
Not quite, Don. Let's talk chili. Channel 3's Jerry Brooks will do just about anything for a free lunch or for a good cause, and today he combined the two for Connecticut's hospice program. The result, what he calls occupational indigestion and a search for a bromo, as he explains in tonight's edition of the Brooks File.
Quite often, we TV types are asked to perform good deeds for the community. But today, I walk into the culinary version of, shall we say, the land down under. I'm cast in the role of sacrificial lamb, playing the role of Lucifer, 3 fire chiefs of Connecticut. I enter Hades to judge their chili cook-off. I am apprehensive, for good reason.
Ours is called the Wallingford Special Chili, and it came from a recipe that's been handed down for generations and generations of Marylanders.
What kind of a man goes head-to-head with his boss in competition?
One that let him know, this is the way of letting him know that he's got to keep doing what he's doing, otherwise it's going to be replaced.
All right, Chief. What happens if the deputy wins?
I assume that you're going to use your influence to get him a position at Channel 3.
Yes, that friendly guy you know as your local fire chief is actually a closet sadomasochist. And the lamb is told he is about to be slaughtered.
Now, when I say spicy, I mean spicy zesty. I don't mean so hot that it burns your mouth.
It's just great balls of fire!
First prize goes to Assistant Chief Richard F. for RAE Chili.
You did tell me before that he could come to work for you at half of what he's getting here.
What are you getting here? We'll discuss that without the cameras.
Good luck. I walk from the belly of the beast a survivor, thinking that in my younger days, I might have washed those concoctions of gastrointestinal torture down with a few root beers. But I'm just not the boy I used to be, I guess. From the Brooks File, I'm Jerry Brooks, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Hartford.
This is great balls of fire!
The system, Madison residents must fill out a form at the police department.
We will enter that information in our database, and when they dial 911, that information will appear on the video screen.
Roger, I'm responding to a 911.
For police, it now means they can arrive at a crime scene quicker. As long as a call is made, the dispatcher can get the address. Compare that to a previous call.
The call was made, and the phone was disconnected, and it took quite a while for a trace to come back so we could get the location. So and as a matter of fact, it took about 20 minutes to 30 minutes for us to get the location before we could dispatch any cars to it.
Now response time can be a matter of minutes, thanks to the system installed by Southern New England Telephone. SNET says they're right on schedule, even though the project started 3 years ago. The whole project statewide is costing Connecticut taxpayers $6 million.
Rocky Hill and Wethersfield are the next two towns to get the new 911 system. They'll be installed by the end of this month. By the end of 1989, within 2 years, everyone in the state of Connecticut will have access to the new 911. John Daly, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
That's been entered into a database. That information could include whether the caller is bedridden, in a wheelchair, or perhaps on a life support system. The dispatcher would know if the caller's deaf.
Database, and when they dial 911, that information will appear on the video screen.
In the instance, if a person is unable to tell us where they're at when they call, we'll know instantly where they're at, so we can dispatch fire, ambulance, or police as necessary.
All of this, of course, is part of the statewide effort to get 911 service statewide. The next two towns to get the system will be Rocky Hill and Wethersfield. Within 2 years, every town in the state will have it.
The theme is Play It Safe, Plan Your Escape for National Fire Prevention Week, which starts today. At the Hartford Civic Center this afternoon, city firefighters join fire experts and local school children to help kick off the events. Also included in the group, representatives from the fields of emergency medicine and construction. In keeping with Fire Prevention Week, 3 on Your Side reporter Linda Carson tonight begins an Eyewitness News Extra. It's called Fireproof. Linda.
Well, house fires are a major problem in Connecticut, Denise. Last year, almost 3,000 homes burned in this state, and 45 people died in those fires. And most of those fires could have been prevented. Here are some fire hazards you need to look for in your home before it's too late. This could be your home, a raging inferno. It happens so fast, a careless cigarette, a trash can ignites, and everything and everyone you love can be destroyed in minutes. Anthony Redding knows. He awoke in an apartment engulfed in flames last December. He was burned badly as he rescued 3 small children.
Well, I was burning, which I didn't know it at the time. You know, my back, arm, at the time I was pretty much on fire.
What was going through your mind at that time?
Just to try to get everybody saved, safely out of there.
In minutes, a raging fire can turn your home into a burned-out shell like that. And your favorite possessions, that chair and sofa and the bedroom suit that you worked and saved and planned so long for, into nothing but charred ruins. The secret to keeping this sort of thing from happening at your house is to eliminate those fire hazards now.
The biggest area of problems is in the chimney or the flue.
Before the first use in the fall or in the winter, make sure that your chimney's been cleaned. Get the creosote out.
Last February 20th, 5 young children died in a fire in an apartment in Willimantic. The fire started when the cord of a radio became pinched behind the couch. There's a tragic lesson to learn here.
Children never should be left alone. 2, that was determined to be misuse of an electrical extension cord.
Similar fire hazards may be endangering your home right now. A curling iron, coffee pot, toaster, or hair dryer left plugged in when you're not using it. The appliance is accidentally turned on or shorts out and your home is destroyed. You can also create other major fire hazards when you put away your summer tools and get ready for cold weather.
We put our lawnmowers away and we take the gasoline and put it inside in the cellar or in the garage. These are flammable liquids. We wouldn't bring dynamite into our homes, but yet that gasoline can be as lethal as the dynamite can be.
Space heaters are another major fire hazard this time of year. Of course, you remember that kerosene heaters are illegal in a lot of Connecticut cities, and many fire marshals say that they're too dangerous to use anywhere. Electric heaters and wood stoves can be safe if you use them properly, but you can just bet that somebody is going to lose their home and maybe even their life this year by either putting that space heater too close to the drapes or the furniture or just throwing some clothes over it, and then the fire will start, Denise.
And of course, smoke detectors are invaluable.
Oh, they certainly are. Tomorrow we're going to take you on a walk through your house from top to bottom and tell you what to look for.
Good to know. Okay, thank you, Linda Carson. Pat?
Still ahead tonight.
Middle school students, many injuries are reported.
And we got the latest now from Action News reporter Carla Wohl, who is just back from the scene in Wallingford, is standing by live in our Action Newsroom. Carla?
Al, at this point, we do know of at least one serious injury, and that is the driver of the school van. He had to be extricated from the vehicle. In addition, at least 8 of the 13 children on board the school van have been taken to 3 local hospitals. It does not appear that they are seriously injured. However, their conditions are still being evaluated at this time. The accident happened at the intersection of Durham and Dribble Edge Road in Wallingford. The van was traveling east, taking the children home from Dag Hammarskjöld Middle School. Apparently, the rear end of the westbound dump truck skidded out, hitting the van. A neighbor took the children in until the ambulances arrived to transport them to the 3 hospitals. Police tell us that the driver of the dump truck fled the scene after the accident. Authorities are looking for him and say charges are likely. Again, at this point, we only know that the driver of the school van is seriously injured. We are still waiting for condition reports on the children. We will have more for you on Action News at 6. For now, I'm Carla Wohl in New Haven.
And Carla, apparently weather was a factor in this accident?
Yes, they said that it is a dangerous intersection to begin with. It is hard to see around the curve there, and that the snow made it even worse, that when the truck came around, it apparently skidded out on the snow.
All right, thank you.
Carla.
Well, the snow is expected to make a mess out of this rush hour we're in right now. Police across the state are keeping a watch on road conditions everywhere.
And Charmaine Wilkerson joins us live on the action cam now with more on tonight's commute. Charmaine?
Hospital in Meriden. They are reported to be shaken up but in good condition. 3 other children are being evaluated at Meriden Wallingford Hospital, and 2 are at Yale New Haven Hospital. Again, re-emphasizing what we reported, none of the injuries in that school van accident in Wallingford appear to be serious. Ken Wall tonight is monitoring traffic conditions elsewhere around Old Middle School. A dump truck with a full load of hot asphalt was traveling in the opposite direction. Channel 3's Ginny Musanti has been at the scene. Here's more of what she learned.
We had a collision in this sharp curve. What happened, the dump truck apparently slid into the direction of travel of the school van. There was a collision and the operator of the school van was apparently seriously injured. The driver of the dump truck fled the scene.
Everybody was holding heads and limping, and I could see a lot of them were hurt. And I guess the driver was pinned in. One kid, I got a blanket for him immediately. He had a big gouge in his forehead, blood down in the whole front of him, and he was talking unconscious. He gave me his name and number. And Donna, my sister-in-law, stayed with him with cold cloths, and you know, they had all hot tar on them from the truck, and so a lot of the kids were burning from that.
4 of the children were taken to Yale New Haven Hospital. Most have cuts and bruises. 1 girl may have a broken wrist. 5 more children are reported to be in good condition at World War II Veterans Memorial Hospital in Meriden. These children are ages 12 and 13. 3 others are being evaluated tonight at Meriden Wallingford Hospital. No word yet on the condition of the driver of the van. Police, you heard them say the driver of the truck fled the scene. Police are now interviewing a man who identifies himself as an occupant of the truck. That man may, in fact, be the driver. We'll have more on the story throughout the Eyewitness News 90 minutes. In other news tonight, from Wallingford, a propane-powered forklift at a Wallingford factory today broke, releasing its noxious fumes that sent dozens of workers into the streets and 20 people to the hospital. Channel 3's Newton Burkett reports.
One by one, the propane fumes took their toll. First just a handful, then groups of 2, 3, and more.
Some of the people just said they felt bad, so I called for an ambulance to start checking them out just to make sure that there was nothing serious. And at that point, they just seemed to start falling.
I feel fine. I'm all right. Just excitement seeing everybody getting sick. They got lightheaded, nauseous, mostly.
Paramedics rushed them to 2 local hospitals.
Doctors at area emergency rooms were overwhelmed. 10 of the patients were treated here at World War II Veterans Memorial Hospital in Meriden.
10 more taken cross town to Meriden Wallingford.
They were exposed for about 5 to 10 minutes. There was no one who was seriously ill. We did arterial blood gases on them to be sure that they had not been exposed too seriously.
All were treated and later released. Firefighters got the call shortly before 10 o'clock. Workers were changing the fuel tanks on a propane-powered forklift at the Dow Tile Company. Somehow, this valve ruptured, spewing propane gas across the area.
The biggest worry is that the propane could be ignited by any flash and the whole building could blow up.
Firefighters evacuated several adjoining businesses. Most of those overcome worked for Integrated Power Technologies, a circuit board manufacturer and defense subcontractor. The tank was quickly shut down. Firefighters say close calls don't get much closer than this. Newton Burkett, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Wallingford.
A Plymouth woman charged with her husband of sexually abusing 4 young children today pled not guilty to the
home from Dag Hammarskjöld Middle School in Wallingford when their van was hit by this dump truck.
We have a sharp curve here, and the passenger of the dump truck indicated that the snow conditions contributed to the truck sliding into the travel lane of the school van.
The driver had to be pried out of the school van. He appears to be the most seriously injured. Many of the children were bruised and burned, apparently by the asphalt being hauled on the truck. 12 students were taken to 3 local hospitals. Their conditions are still being evaluated, although we do have 1 report of a broken wrist. Residents, meanwhile, say this is a dangerous intersection.
It's got to be one of the worst intersections around here that I've seen. It's terrible in the wintertime. You can't see what's coming around the corner.
Today, that poor visibility was made even more hazardous by the slippery, snowy roads. In Wallingford, I'm Carla Wohl, Action News 8.
Earlier, we reported the driver of the dump truck had fled the scene. Now, police say they were mistaken. It turns out that a man they thought was a passenger in the truck was actually the driver, and we want to clarify he did not leave the scene. Al?
Kathy, elsewhere across the state tonight, examining road conditions, we have found that they are not as bad as you might expect they'd be with this kind of weather. Meriden is one of the areas with more snow on the roads, but most areas this hour have more water than ice or snow on the roadways. State police in southern and central Connecticut are reporting fender benders on Interstates 95 and 91, and on Interstate 84, a truck accident earlier in the evening caused some delays. Remember, as the temperatures continue to fall tonight, roads and especially the bridges may become icy. So be careful, especially as you approach bridges, and stay home if you can, if you don't have to go outside. And the question now, of course, is...
Asphalt. Other students and the driver are still undergoing observation. We are awaiting word on their condition. As for the driver of the dump truck, well, he apparently escaped unharmed. Police are right now interviewing a man who said he was a passenger in the dump truck at the time of the accident, but there is some speculation tonight that that man may have actually been the driver. As for charges, police say it's too early to tell whether any will be filed. It was a very, very slippery night, as we know, and it was a very, very dangerous hairpin turn. The neighbors here say they have been lobbying for signs, light, anything here to help the situation. They say there have been 5 accidents in the last 6 years. Jerry?
All right, Ginny Musanti with the Live Eye in Wallingford. Thank you very much. State highway crews...
People in nearby buildings on North Plains Road. Officials say the leak started at about 10 this morning when a propane tank used to power a forklift began to leak. 3 Daltile employees and 16 workers in the nearby buildings were treated for a number of symptoms, including dizziness, nausea, chest pains, and fainting. A top boss in organized crime heads...
We're getting from a top state official. Now, our reporter Keith Kuntz spent the day with an emergency medical services crew and has their view of the situation.
This is what it's like to be an EMT in Wallingford, and across the state there is a critical shortage of emergency workers. In this line of work, a matter of minutes can mean the difference between life and death.
I'd also like to start giving a sublingual nitroglycerin 0.4.
Response time is important when you're talking about something like a cardiac arrest. Our goal is to get someone to the scene within 5 minutes that's CPR trained.
Right now, there are 13,000 EMTs in the state, and many believe that's not enough to meet the demand. The fact is, 80% of the state's EMTs are volunteers. That's a big reason why there is a manpower shortage.
We're seeing towns not being able to get an ambulance crew during the daytime in the rural areas because our volunteers are out of town working. We have husbands and wives both working, so there it is critical.
Attracting more people to the field is a top priority for emergency workers meeting this weekend in Cromwell. The EMTs we spoke to say despite the manpower shortage, no lives are being put in danger.
We have more people now than we ever did before. It's growing.
Sometimes there's just very little you could do besides, stabilize the patient and get them to continuing care in the hospital. So I think there's a lot of pressure put on EMTs.
As for recruiting new emergency workers, Gentile says the key is offering more money to the paid EMTs and getting the word out to the public that more volunteers are needed. In Wallingford, Keith Kuntz, Action News 8.
And that shortage of EMS workers boiled over today in New York City. Half of the Big Apple's emergency workers called in sick today.
2 construction workers. Part of a bridge in the process of being expanded suddenly collapsed, trapping 2 men. Keith Kuntz is now joining us live on the action cam with the latest. Keith?
Well, Diane, I'm on the Route 150 bridge here in Wallingford, the Yalesville section of Wallingford. And believe it or not, there is traffic rolling on this bridge this hour, which is almost unbelievable if you consider that it was just a short time ago when it was a very tense situation here. Rescuers work frantically to free the 2 men trapped underneath the bridge. The span caved in without warning. Officials still don't know exactly what went wrong.
It seems as though they were working in the trench and the dirt came down around one worker, partially covering him. The other worker was able to get out. What happened, it seemed like it was a large section of asphalt came loose, and then that pushed it down on top of them.
Construction crews have been working to add lanes to this bridge since early summer. When part of the bridge caved in, there was little fellow employees could do.
I was scared, you know. You never know what's happening, you know. You build a friendship when you work with these guys all year long, you know, and you're afraid, you know, they're screwed up.
The injured were rushed to Meriden Wallingford Hospital. They're identified as Marvin Cody of Middletown and Thomas Bogley of New Britain. Authorities say neither of the injuries appears to be life-threatening. And you are looking at a live picture of the bridge, the exact spot where that accident took place. And as you can see, there is work being done right now. There are OSHA people who have been at the scene in addition to rescue crews from the Wallingford area. They will have a complete report later in the day. As for the condition of the two workers injured, we are told they are both in good condition this midday at Meriden Wallingford Hospital. That's the latest. I'm Keith Kuntz, live on the Action Cam. Back to you, Diane.
Connecticut's Action News Midday with Mark Davis, Diane Smith, and Nancy Aborn with the weather. Plus, reports from the Action News team. Now, Action News Midday.
Officials are still trying to find out what sparked a 4-alarm blaze at a Wallingford industrial complex this morning. Hello, Mark Davis is off up front at midday. Firefighters in Wallingford are still putting out the sparks from a blaze that destroyed one business and damaged several others. Action News reporter Keith Kuntz has been on the scene of the fire since early this morning. He joins us now live on the Action News Cam in Wallingford. Keith?
Well, Diane, this has been a very hot fire. It has been going on since about 8:30 this morning at this very old industrial complex in Wallingford. Now, the blaze was confined to, it started and was confined to a company called the Wallingford Barbell Company. It is relatively calm now. Firefighters are taking a well-deserved break, but it was a much different scene here just a short number of hours ago. More than 50 firefighters battled the blaze from 3 different angles. Smoke and flames shooting hundreds of feet into the morning sky.
I have never seen anything like this before. Jeez, this is terrible. And I turned my head, and all of a sudden the whole place was burning.
Firefighters doused gallons of water on the 2-story brick building for more than 3 hours.
There's around, I think, 6 or 8 different companies in here, small companies. So you have everything from household appliance or household goods to plating companies to different things like that.
All 6 people working inside the Barbell Company escaped without injury. The morning's primary concern then became the safety of the firefighters and people working in the area.
But I know there are flammable substances, you know, paints and aerosol and things of that nature.
Now, we should tell you that, again, nobody was injured in this fire, despite the really intensity of the flames that you saw in that video. We are told that the blaze by a company employee of Waterbury Barbell has told us that the blaze started in a spray booth at the company. The fire officially is still under investigation at this hour. We should tell you also this is a very old building built in the early 1900s. People who worked in a number of other companies near the Wallingford Barbell Company were also evacuated. But
From Bridgeport, that 4 older girls.
It took firefighters more than an hour and a half to control a fire threatening to spread a hazardous chemical in Wallingford Industrial Park. Flames destroyed the Wallingford Barbell Company where paint thinner and propane cylinders are stored. Fire officials aren't sure of the exact cause but believe it could have started in an exhaust fan of the spray paint area. In addition to the chemicals, a faulty sprinkler system also hampered the firefighters' efforts.
We were inside trying to hold the fire. When it was determined that we couldn't hold the fire, we didn't want to risk our people. We made sure everybody was out. We found out what was inside. Then we went to mainly a defensive attack.
And firefighters were able to keep flames from spreading to adjacent buildings where household cleaners are stored. Employees evacuated safely. 1 firefighter suffered heat exhaustion.
You may recall the mystery fumes and illnesses last summer at the DOT Annex building in Wethersfield.
the sprinkler system.
After more than 90 minutes, firefighters were able to keep the flames away from adjacent buildings where cleaning fluid and other flammable materials are stored.
Our concern was there was some of the plating chemicals in one of the other buildings. It looks like, though, we would have had plenty of time to actually move the building.
The cause of the blaze and full extent of the damage is not yet known. In Wallingford, Jim Hadley, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Fire started shortly after 8:30 this morning. Fire officials say the blaze began inside the Wallingford Barbell Company, maybe in the basement. Company employees managed to escape without injury. Hundreds had to be evacuated as businesses inside the factory went up in smoke.
It all happened so quick. I don't know exactly what could have started it.
I turned my head, and all of a sudden the whole place was burning. It was like I've never seen anything like it before.
Wallingford Barbell and another business were completely destroyed by the flames. 4 other firms were damaged. Officials still don't know tonight what started the fire.
Lots more to come here on Live. Reporter Kevin Hogan tells us many of the owners and employees watched years of hard work go up in smoke.
Tonight, many of the businesses plan to rebuild from the ashes.
Went so fast, there was nothing nobody could do.
The fire destroyed 2 businesses, New England Distributors and Wallingford Barbell Company.
We were in there working and turned around and there was a fire in the spray booth, and we told everybody to get out.
Dave Papusha says his company was spared.
The people come out of Wallingford Barbell yelling fire, and they came next door to Red Cap and took a fire extinguisher, and next thing you know, the whole building was up and engulfed.
I'm standing in the doorway of Fedco. They make fiberglass caps for trucks. Owner Dave Papusha says the fire came only 20 feet away, 20 feet from costing him almost $500,000 in damage. These fiberglass molds for pickup truck caps cost $50,000 each, but lost in the fire were the pre-holiday paychecks for these employees of Wallingford Barbell.
Bad time of year to lose a business like this, you know. Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up.
It won't be a happy holiday for Richard and Lisa Daly. They just started a packaging and display business here 8 months ago.
We're going to go call our insurance agent, and we're just going to take it from there. And we'll do what we have to do to start from the ground and just start over.
Meanwhile, Irene Mason's wondering what the future holds for her heating and air conditioning company.
Until we get inside, I don't know what we're going to find when we get in there. Hopefully our offices haven't been damaged too much.
George Cook bought the Silversmith complex in 1978. He's already telling his tenants what he plans to do.
I'm going to tear the building down and get it out of here. We'll make some adjustments for the buildings behind it and make a parking area out of the rest of it.
Fire investigators say they'll allow the businesses back in once they know their buildings are safe. Kevin Hogan, Action News 8, Wallingford.
What a shame.
What a blessing nobody was hurt.
Well, that's the thing we can be thankful
goodness.
for, that's for sure.
It just ripped through there. Well, we have had...
Channel 3's Newton Burkett with that story.
How, they say, could anyone have survived? But the fact is that all 4 passengers on board and their veteran chopper pilot made it out alive.
How they walked away from it with what they had, you know, somebody's watching out for them.
The helicopter, known as a Bell Long Ranger, crash-landed in the back lot of a Wallingford trucking company at 1:20 a.m. 2 of the victims rushed to Meriden Wallingford Hospital. 3 were taken to Yale, New Haven. All are expected to make full recoveries, and no one on the ground was hurt.
The pilot must have realized he was having some kind of difficulties and tried to set it down. It's not too far from here where the landing pad is.
It is a huge parking lot, certainly big enough to land a helicopter in the event of an emergency. For now, the preliminary cause of the crash appears to be engine failure. The group was attending a party at the AquaTurf at Southington Banquet Hall and chartered the helicopter to take them there and back. The trip from Southington to Wallingford takes less than 10 minutes, and it wasn't until they were half a mile from their destination that they realized something was wrong.
I heard the engine sputtering, like it was trying to cut out, like a lawnmower does, pop, pop. And it was like for, I would say, a minute before we crashed. I thought I was going to die, I really did.
Langa says she'll never forget how lucky she was, walking away with just a few cuts and a broken thumb. She credits their pilot. Ed Polanski flies for Wallingford's W.I. Clark Company and is a World War II vet. He's been flying for nearly 3 decades, some of that time spent as a part-time pilot for Sky 3. Even in the event of an engine failure, helicopters such as the Bell Long Ranger can land safely if the pilot disengages the main rotor, a process known in aviation as auto-rotation. The FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board are looking into it.
I will look at the whole accident scene and talk to the people involved.
And no word so far on what caused the engine to give out. Newton Burkett, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Wallingford.
Nyberg, Ken Strayhorn on sports, and the weather with Dr. Mel. Plus reports from the Action News team. Now, Action News Weekend.
Good evening, I'm Ann Nyberg. The National Transportation Safety Board says tonight it could be up to 9 months before the real cause of the crash of Flight 232 is known. Meantime, the grim task of identifying the bodies of the 110 victims goes on. A West Haven neighborhood is still reeling from the news that 24-year-old Joel Bosco was one of 5 listed as dead from Connecticut. Have already been treated for coming in contact with that toxic cloud. A gunman who opened fire on a crowded city bus in Hollywood, Florida remains at large tonight. 2 people were killed in the shooting spree, and police there say they have no motive or clues why. Connecticut to aid in the fight against Lyme disease. At about 5:30 this evening. At this hour, they're still dousing hot spots. The blaze broke out in a 3rd-floor apartment of the Silver Pond retirement community. Fire officials saying several hundred people were evacuated. Fire officials tell Action News the sprinkler system in the renovated building did a great job in containing the fire to the one apartment, but there is substantial smoke and water damage to other areas. 4 firefighters were slightly injured fighting that fire. The Red Cross is finding accommodations for 5 families unable to return to their apartments tonight. Hartford police say a 30-year-old man was arrested Saturday, and he's confessed to committing a string of burglaries as the notorious...
I'm John Crane in Derby, where people...
Good evening. At the top of the news tonight, a fire at a power company substation in Wallingford has left much of the community in the dark, and it has brought about an evacuation tonight. At about 8:30 this evening, fire broke out in a generator which is owned by the Wallingford Electric Division, and that plunged virtually the whole east side of town into darkness. About an hour later, police began evacuating streets southeast of the power plant, a neighborhood where winds were blowing possibly dangerous fumes. Now, that fire, at last report, was still burning, and there's no word yet on when electricity might be restored. But we're going to get the latest now in a live report.
That's right, Al. Bill Berry is the general manager of Wallingford Electric Division, and he joins us now. Bill, let's begin with the danger of that fire. What is the situation right now?
At this point, there's no danger at all. The equipment failure has been brought under control, the fire's under control, and we're working on restoring power. At the height of the outage, we had about 4,000 customers out. At this point, we probably have half of that, and I would hope within the next 5 to 6 hours we'll have everybody back in service.
Now, Bill, there had been some concern about the fumes in the air, and I heard something about PCBs, a possible concern. What can you tell us about that?
I think that was a concern originally because the smoke was so dense, the fire was so significant. In fact, the explosion happened on a vacuum circuit breaker that contained no oil, so there's no PCB concerns at all, Al.
And do you know anything about the cause of the fire yet?
At this point, no. We've had a significant equipment failure. I'm not sure what it is. It's much too soon to tell, but we're doing our best to get everybody back in service in the next few hours.
And certainly an investigation of just what happened will follow that. Bill, thanks for joining us tonight.
Bill Berry, general manager of the Wallingford Electric Division, where there's a fire at a substation and quite a few people still in Wallingford without power tonight.
In other news, people in Wallingford for the latest. John?
Kathy and Al, right about now, about 2,000 homes here in Wallingford and Northford, as you mentioned, are still without power. Electric crews here at the Wallingford Electric Company are working very hard inside the substation here, trying to restore power to the rest of the homes. Now, we have some videotape we're going to show you here. It happened around 8 o'clock. A breaker apparently blew. There was a big explosion and a fire. A lot of smoke went up into the air. Police came through the area here asking people to evacuate. Many did. Many have now returned at this hour. And we are being told right now that it should take about 4 to 6 hours before power is restored to those 2,000 homes in the area that don't have any electricity right now. Kathy and Al?
Okay, John, thank you very much. Of course, we'll follow up on this story tomorrow as they search for the cause of that power outage, and hopefully by then everybody will be back online.
And we thank you for joining us tonight. ABC's Nightline is coming.